officials in Ukraine are responding to a translator error in a recent address by President Volodymyr Zelensky, who called on NATO to take stronger action.
And our foreign correspondent Shelby Wilder is live in Ukraine right now to break it all down for us. What's happening with this translation issue now, Shelby?
Hi, good afternoon. Well, as you mentioned, President Zelensky spoke to the Sydney-based Lowy Institute, and during this speech, it was believed that he was calling for preemptive strikes by the West on Russia. Now, the Kremlin immediately responded, calling Zelensky a monster and saying that he was trying to start a world war. Meanwhile, Ukraine went into damage control and said that Zelensky had been misinterpreted. They said that his interpreter should have said that he was calling for preventative action rather than strikes. And what Zelensky was really referring to was additional economic sanctions against Russia. But regardless, at that point, it was sort of too late, and we saw significant reaction to this, especially on social media, where there was a lot of backlash. Now, moving on to other news here in Ukraine, we've been following the UN's International Atomic Energy Agency as they have representatives on the ground in Kyiv. They've been here trying to establish a demilitarized zone around the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. Now, this is really an ambitious goal, given that earlier this week, President Putin said that he wanted his government to control the power plant, despite it sitting on Ukrainian soil. But in Putin's eyes, the Zaporizhzhia region is now a part of the Russian Federation following their illegal land grab and annexation. We should also note that the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant is the largest in Europe. It is operated by Ukrainians, but under Russian control. And Putin now says that it is, quote, federal property. And again, just going back to the Ukrainian staff that's working in the power plant, they've reportedly been under horrific conditions. They've been subjected to abuse and treatment, sometimes working at gunpoint by Russian forces there. So we can really only imagine the sort of immense pressure that they're facing to operate this plant. Meanwhile, the UN nuclear watchdog did manage to install inspectors there at the plant on the ground last month, and they're overseeing the facility and its security. But at the same time, the nuclear agency said that its goal here in Ukraine is really to prevent a nuclear disaster. The head of the agency, Mr. Grossi, warned that it was still a clear possibility given Putin's recent announcement this week, along with really the continued strikes that have been happening around the Zaporizhzhia power plant since the war began. And in a speech last night, Zelensky said that the situation here in Ukraine with the power plant not only affects Ukrainians, but it also affects Europe in the case of a nuclear disaster. He also said that Russian occupiers were the reason for the increasing tensions here on the ground.
All right, Shelby Wilder for us live in Ukraine. Thank you, Shelby. All right, let's welcome in now former Trump 2016 foreign policy advisor and Newsmax contributor George Papadopoulos. Also back with us, retired Army Lieutenant Colonel Tony Shaffer, the president of the London Center for Policy Research, also a Newsmax contributor. Great to have you guys with us.
Let's begin with, gentlemen, thank you, with what Shelby was just reporting. We can't afford to have anything lost in translation when we're talking in such tense times here. Tony, first to you. There's this issue, preemptive measures versus preemptive strikes, and we have a translator who could have really caused some serious harm here, don't you think?
Yeah, look, when you're talking about rolling the nuclear dice, you have to be very precise in your language. And I always look back as reference to 1962 and the Cuban Missile Crisis. Words were so carefully parsed to not encourage or result in a misunderstanding. And we're back at that point again. And it's ironic, Bianca, that we're having to deal with a lot of the same issues John Fitzgerald Kennedy dealt with now in the 21st century. So we have to be very precise. They have to be very precise because there's far too much at stake to have a random word be used that ratchets things up to the point of where you have these nuclear weapons deployed visibly on the battlefield.
Yeah, one of the interesting subplots, too, to the Cuban Missile Crisis was the constant communication that President Kennedy had with President Eisenhower, a wartime general, both of them military officers, talking about how careful they had to be and the strategy. We doubt that's happening now with our current president. But, George, you know, we do have the current American president using words like Armageddon at a Democratic fundraiser. Is that reckless as well?
Look, given that Putin has really failed in his maximalist strategy to really overthrow the government in Ukraine and take over Kiev within a week, and now given his losses on the battlefield, he's resorting to these sham referendums and the annexation of another 15% of Ukraine's territory. The stakes are incredibly high. We do have a concerted and a coalition of the willing in Europe who are maintaining sanctions, something that is shocking many in the United States, especially within NATO. Many thought that NATO and the Europeans would eventually flop and given up on sanctions, but actually the Europeans are ratcheting this up. And Putin is in a corner now. And as Biden, who is not there to keep these hotlines open between the Ukrainians and the Russians or help mediate a ceasefire, as many, including this viral Elon Musk Twitter exchange with Lindsey Graham over the last couple of days. This rhetoric regarding Armageddon does absolutely no favors whatsoever, doesn't change the facts on the ground. And this is a time for American strength and resolve to help mediate a ceasefire before things really do result in a true Armageddon.
Yeah, excellent point there. And, you know, Tony, we have an article up right now on Newsmax Platinum that folks can read, and we want to get your take on it. They say if Putin really wants to change the game on the battlefield, taking nuclear into account, a former Army intelligence officer, Kervin Aucoin, predicts that a tactical nuclear strike would be targeted at troops that are fighting the counteroffensive in Ukrainian cities of Kherson or Kharkiv. What do you make of that? We've had a lot happening in the past few days, the train, the submarine. What do you think of that piece?
So I think he has to go back and study the downwind models of where that nuclear radiation would go. So yeah, I think those are logical targets. Remember, Bianca, I was a Cold War soldier and intelligence officer. We had anticipated having to lay down and fight on a nuclear battlefield between East and West Germany. Talk about a really great prospect for a young lieutenant. But we examined what the doctrine would be. So would the Russians do that? Yeah, based on Cold War doctrine, they would. But the downwind plumes go right back into Russia. I'm looking at the map right now. I wish you guys could see it. It's on the BBC's website. If you look at those cities, the prevailing winds go right back into Russia. So there would be some real downsides. And by the way, Bianca, we need to be reminding Putin of those downsides. Like, yeah, you can do this, but this is what's really going to happen. So this is what really troubles me about the fact that what he's saying is absolutely correct. We, the United States, needs to be incorporating that into our thinking, to George's point, to encourage a ratcheting down of tensions and trying to find a diplomatic solution, because any nuclear exchange will result in everybody losing, especially in this case, even Putin, if he really thinks it through.
Yeah, the idea of mutually assured destruction still holds true, I guess. I mean, that would ultimately maybe where this is going, and that's what everybody is so scared of. Going back to the original, the initial point of this,
right.
The language is so delicate at this point. Those translation errors, really scary. Guys, great to see you both, Tony and George. Have a great weekend, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for your insight.
No crooked establishment.
None of that twisting the truth. No talking down to me.
Don't tell me how to think.
Don't tell me how to think.
Don't tell me how to think.
I trust Newsmax.
Newsmax.
They don't tell me how to think. They
Let me decide.
Newsmax.
Real news
for real people.